going on, everybody? See some AMA questions coming in. How's everybody doing? Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers. Excited to jump on for the next hour, answer some questions. It's nice. I can see this AMA, the AMA channel. Going back to my older days with the profile picture there. That's nice. But welcome in. Excited to answer some questions. We are going crazy over here. I'm sitting in the studio. We just we had a show this morning. We've been following the Alvin Kamara news, which is just kind of wild, heading right into drafts, which is nuts. Hopefully they can come to an agreement. Last I had heard right before I hopped on, Kamara had he wanted the McCaffrey type of money. They were willing to pay him top 5 type of money. So we'll see what happens there. But looks like it's right on the hour. So I'm going to start walking through some of these questions. But I look forward to spending some time with everybody. Yeah, I see questions coming in. Welcome in. Good to talk to y'all. All right, let's start here. Looks like Derek sent this one in. I'm just going from the top here. Backfield that I'm completely avoiding at all costs this year. I think New England probably falls into that category as one of those where, like, if Damian Harris hype moves him up to where people are wanting to take him a little too high, it's just messy. James White, new quarterback, Sony Michel, Lamar Miller. No, I don't think he has anything left, but at the same time, it's kind of a mess. So that might be in that category. There are a couple of, like, very high upside backfields that, you know, like, I'm not sure I'm willing to pay the Jonathan Taylor price for where he's going right now. So Indianapolis is interesting. A lot of upside, a little bit messy. The Rams backfield's a little bit messy right now. I love Cam Akers, the talent, but if, you know, the rookie takes a couple weeks to really get, you know, to work, and Malcolm Brown's taking carries and then Darrell comes back, that could be messy. Not necessarily avoiding those, but I'm not, you know, going to reach on any of those players from those backfields right now. See a lot of folks coming in. Roddy asked, with the recent news about Frank Gore, and then at the time Balaj was a Jet, which he is not anymore. But am I worried about Lev? Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about the Jets in general. Right now, it's just, you know, bad vibes altogether. There are no wide receivers. They're all banged up. They're hurt. Mike accidentally called Jamison Crowder Jamison Target today. And then Herndon's banged up. Like, Herndon has such an opportunity with the Jets this year that I'm so disappointed to have any injury news get in the way of that. He could be so heavily targeted to start the year. Lev, I mean, he can catch the football, and they need somebody to do that. You know, I am not as concerned, I think, as some, like, where they're taking him off their board. I still think he has an opportunity to have a large amount of the work, but that didn't lead to much last year. So just about draft costs, I think, with Lev. That's nice. I'm seeing Sony Michel typing in here, so hopefully he knows that I went to bat for him last year and he let me down. All right, J-Man 1406. 49er receivers seem to be having injury issues. Yeah, over and over again. Do we dare mention Dante Pettis' name? I've read some articles that say he may be practicing well. Is this his opportunity to make a meaningful impact? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, Dante Pettis, he has the draft pedigree, but he just fell out of favor so much. And this is not an offense that I want, you know, tertiary receiving, you know, options. He could have an impact for the 49ers on a, you know, week or two basis over the course of the year, but I don't think he's going to do much by way of fantasy impact, I'm afraid. I think those days, that hope, those dreams, I think they're dead. So D-backs freak. hard to be a D-backs fan right now. Fournette or Melvin Gordon coming close to career highs this year? Well, this was probably sent in before Fournette was released, so no. He actually just cleared waivers, by the way. No Leonard Fournette. Nobody claimed Leonard Fournette. I was just talking with Jason and Mike about, are we going to have a situation where he's like Devontae Freeman, where he wants to be paid a certain amount of money, believes he's worth it, or is he going to settle and go someplace? For many of the contending teams, I think he had to clear waivers for him to become an option because they didn't want to pay that salary. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. But no, I don't think either of those guys are going to be career high threats at all. Do contract years matter for offensive players in terms of fantasy production? I don't have any metrics in front of me in terms of contract year players and fantasy production. So I do not know that answer off the top of my head in terms of like a statistical analysis of those players. I like players having something to play for, just generally. And so, and they like the assurance of having that contract. And, Joe Mixon, one of my guys, I was in a bad situation when the contract talk started, and I'm sitting here going, oh, great. Am I planting my flag on Joe Mixon and the talent? And then all of a sudden, he's not going to sign, but I was saved today with the 4-year deal. And here we are with Alvin Kamara. So, players always want that guarantee, but let's see. What is in your opinion, the most important factor you use to help determine your rankings and tiers? I can kind of go to the cliche of talent and opportunity. I mean, when I'm looking at the most important factors, I want to, assured opportunity in an offense makes a humongous difference. We have enough guesswork, variables in fantasy, injuries, coaching, so many things come into play, schedule, opponent, but opportunities, when you can see through the situation and you can guarantee some opportunity for a player, that's definitely step one. So it's one of the things. I mean, I think we disagree on the show, Mike and I in particular, sometimes because I see the talent of a player like Antonio Gibson or Jonathan Taylor. But for me, if I don't see a pathway there or a clean path, it's harder for me to get on board early. And I might miss on a guy here or there, but I'm also not going to be rostering somebody that they have the talent side but not the opportunity side, not as easily at least. Stats from previous seasons that I think are most predictive for a player's future. It's a good question. Sony Michel. So Sony Michel would tell me that it's not your playoff performance, because man alive, did I think that he had an opportunity last year coming out of the playoffs, out of the Super Bowl, still ended up 240 plus carries on the ground, and it just didn't materialize. I certainly don't find, numbers like total touchdowns. It's not a predictive stat. It's very difficult to see that carry on year to year, even for the best players. I'm not looking, you look at some of the outlier seasons for quarterbacks and you see generally outlier touchdown percentage numbers. The last couple of years with a 23-year-old Patrick Mahomes, a 23-year-old Lamar Jackson, it's like 9% and 8% touchdown percentages. Those things are outliers. That's why whether you're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or even Matthew Stafford's illustrious 40-plus touchdown season, you just don't see those type of numbers repeat. So, seeing some of the foundational quarterback numbers, completion percentage and, total attempts and opportunity. I'm trying to find opportunity metrics, not, outlier stats. One thing I've recently learned that I wish I knew when entering the fantasy industry, I feel like I could answer that question a lot of different ways. I think, man, we were just watching some of our older videos too and thinking back to the early days. When we first started, this was a side hustle. We've got $3,000 in the bank. Do we spend the money to go be a part of the FSTA conferences or network or meet people? I think, I think we were surprised to see, you certainly have some people in the industry that are standoffish and protective of what they're doing and competitive, and everybody should be, in business, you're competitive. But at the same time, I think I was really amazed at the amount of people that are kind of like, you know, rising tide raises all ships type of thing, where we're competitive, but we're cooperative at the same time. And so all the good people in the industry and space and the friends we've met and the people that were willing to welcome us in as brand new people of the industry, I think was pretty important. And it's a difficult thing. We get asked the question about breaking into the industry all the time, and like there's not like a cheat code, I don't think. And for some people, it's grinding. It's hustle. It's grinding. It's articles. It's contributing. It's all driven by a passion back behind it. But for others, someone like Matt Harmon from NFL.com and then now Yahoo, it was kind of creating his own brand and his own custom analytic, with reception perception. So I always say that if you have something you're passionate about and then you got to find your voice in the space. You got to find something that you're bringing that's unique. You can't try to imitate somebody else. If we had flipped on the microphones 5 years ago and tried to been, Matthew Berry or, somebody that we, even other shows that, we listened to at the time, CBS, like if we had tried to get on and been Jamie and Dave and Adam, that wouldn't have worked. So we had to be ourselves. And if you're bringing something of quality and value to the table, and people like it, they'll stick around and you'll grow. And if you don't, then you won't. So we've always kind of just stayed in our lane, done what we do. And if people appreciate it and like it, then they stick around and we're thankful for that. So I don't think there's a cheat code, and I don't think there's something, other than the principles of every entrepreneur in the world, which is you're going to have to work your butt off, probably going to have to hustle more than you want to in the beginning. And hopefully, if it's the right thing that you're bringing to the equation, the right kind of value, it'll work. So, Dom FFL says this might be more for when fantasy wasn't your full-time job. How do you balance your job, wife, kids, and fantasy football? It may seem strange, but it's hard for me to put myself back into the place of just being a fantasy football fan and not in a bunch of leagues and not doing this for a full-time job. But yeah, I mean, family is really, really important to everybody here at the Fantasy Footballers. All three of us happen to have 3 kids that are very similar ages, and so I think that's been helpful for our business and for the priorities of our business, and for like our time management and planning and things like that. Like, if we had one guy, if Mike was wanting to go on 20 tour dates and Jason and I wanted to stay home and make sure we're around the kids, that would be hard. That would be difficult. But we all have the same priorities, and it helps us limit the amount of things that we're doing. I think we're very, very intentional about like essentialism or 80-20 principle, the idea that, 80% of the effect comes from 20% of the causes. We don't waste our time on very, very small things that don't make a big difference for the business. So we try to focus on a handful of things. The show in particular drives everything we do. We focus on that, and we don't take every opportunity that pops up. And I think that that's been something that helps us manage those things, balancing your job and your personal life. All three of us want to make sure we're there for our kids and our wives, and it is a balancing act, and it's hard. And there are, it's a seasonal business too. So August right now we're doing, 2-a-days, 3-a-days, serious show, morning show, footcast, spitballers, which for the record, for those tuning in, we were fortunate enough to be wise this year and bank like 8 spitballers episodes. So we're not recording them during the peak football season, but yeah, it's a juggle, but we're very intentional. And I think that is the key. Be intentional about balancing. Lava Lord wants to put me on blast here. Did you ever catch flack, or do you ever catch flack for shamelessly predicting high expectations for Kalen Ballage last year? Yes, I actually reviewed my 2019 shamelessly bold predictions. I should have had some shame with that one, but they are bold for a reason. So Yeah, I'm sure I hear about everything. If I say something that went sideways at all, if I make a start of the what was it, Jermaine Kearse. I made a start of the week calling Jermaine Kearse. He had gone 3 or 4 weeks with 6, 7 receptions and puts up a goose on the week I recommend him, and I still hear about it today. So I hear about Dante Pettis. I hear about Kalen Ballage. Yeah, yeah. I cannot see the future, unfortunately. So I guess you um, get some thicker skin over time. But sometimes it sucks. Yeah, I want all my advice to be good. When you meet people, Freddie Airmail, when you meet people who like football but don't do fantasy, do you try to convince them to try it, and how? The best example that I can give to get people into fantasy is how it brings and amplifies all football watching across all teams. It takes you from being a local fan to a national fan of the sport. And I will always remember this just terrible Monday Night Football matchup about 5 years ago. It was like the Jets Browns or some game that it's like 2 3-win teams. Didn't matter. And the whole league, the entire league was just oh, my son is calling me. The entire league was, uh, on pins and needles about this game. So it's one of those things where it amplifies and changes the way you watch. It makes you fans of individual players. And so I would just kind of put it in that category when I'm trying to convince somebody. See if I can stop my 11-year-old from FaceTiming me in the middle of an AMA. Eliza says, how did you start playing fantasy football, and what made you continue playing? Yeah, I've been like a fantasy sports fan for way too long. There's something, I don't know if it's the ADD part of you where you can check something all the time. I've loved it forever. I started in fantasy basketball on a platform called Sandbox. If you've heard of it, that's awesome. It was old school. I played fantasy basketball with Jason when I was in high school. I just loved having something to tune into on my phone, computer. Something was always happening. Um, it was a blast. So, I've always been kind of addicted to that, and the control of like fine tuning and tweaking and being, we're all just pretending here, but it's fun. It's fun. So I've always been kind of addicted to it, and we spent way too much time at my old job, spending spending time when we weren't professional fantasy football players playing. So, Wakanda forever. Hey Andy, I've been listening since the first year that you guys started. The ride's been amazing. Truly enjoyed getting to know the three of you guys. Uh, just to speak to that for 2 seconds, well, thank you. And when we've gone on tour, I think one of the coolest parts about meeting people that like the show is just realizing how much people know us. And we don't get to see the other side of it until we go on tour, until we meet people. And, realizing that a podcast, it's kind of it's in your ear for, every commute or every workout or every one of those routines of your day, and people get to know you well. And that's what we love. It's kind of a unique connection. And so thank you for that. Obviously, championships require a bit of luck. Making the playoff season after season, though, does require skill. It wants to know kind of what's the most important factor when it comes to consistently making your playoffs in fantasy. And he speculates, it looks like he speculates on a lot of things. Is it waivers, trades, stronger draft? Is it who pays the most attention? Before I read your suggestions, my answer was going to be activity. It's really a lot of it's activity. It's being, you know, not, we say guard yourself against tilt and doing all these reactionary moves, sure, but that doesn't mean you can't be active. I've traditionally done more trades, more waiver pickups, those type of things in leagues that I'm successful in. And so, when you're looking at it through that, Mike brought up on the tips and tricks show the idea of looking at the season in chunks. You can break that down to week by week. I mean, you just make moves, one dial twist there, one better defensive pickup, one, start sit decision. I think it's just activity. There is an element of luck, no question about it, a huge element. I mean, we can't see the future, and you have to take the information that you have. And I would probably say too, it's It's activity, but it's also really being glued in like that day before, because that's when you make a switch or two that makes the difference. So, Blaine says you have Eckler ranked 13 in your PPR rankings. It's the lowest I've seen him on any experts list. When I read this, I was a little surprised, I guess, that that was lower than any other expert. I was not aware of that. I like Austin Eckler. I think he's great. I think there are just question marks around the offense and Tyrod and how much passing volume Eckler gets. So I like him. I think he's great. I think he's got tremendous upside. I did have a problem. Like, I was in a PPR draft with CBS yesterday. I'm joining them on a telethon for St. Jude on Wednesday. And it's full PPR, and I'm sitting there going Joe Mixon or Austin Eckler, and I just took Joe Mixon. Like, when it comes down to it, I have a really hard time with the pure pass-dependent running back to be my running back one. So I think he could have a great year. I guess I'm lower. Highest upside sleeper tight end. Well, my answer was Chris Herndon. I think he has tremendous upside. Dealing with a chest injury, I think Noah Fant has tremendous upside. I do agree partly with Mike that Blake Jarwin has tremendous upside. And Dan Arnold in Arizona. Dan Arnold came on, scored a couple touchdowns, ended the season. People didn't really notice. Arizona was like 5-9 at the time or something. So Dan Arnold's an interesting name. Most enjoyable thing for me in fantasy. Game day. Game day is the most enjoyable thing. I would say, as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, like, I love that side of things too. I love being able to create new tools and resources for people in fantasy. I love being able to be creative on the business side. So I'm going to scroll down here for a second and just see the other questions coming in. Let's go back up here. There's quite a few questions. Players that are overrated at their ADP, in your opinion? Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, is overrated at his ADP. Everybody loves Juju. Jonathan Taylor, the fantasy player, not the player, maybe, at his ADP. So that could be another one that fits that category. Do you feel any type of way about Marvin Jones this year in general? He points out that Marvin Jones, I have him at 28. He finishes a top 20 receiver through last year before missing 3 games. Stafford's back. Yeah, I love Matthew Stafford. I mean, he actually was he's our quarterback in the Sleeper Bowl that we just did with Juju. Marvin Jones is difficult though, because your draft ranking, you're projecting the season in total points, but you're also trying to factor in and think about consistency. So, can he finish as a top 20? Yes. Will he feel like a top 20? That's a different question, because he can have a 3-touchdown week and he can disappear and he can get banged up. So I do like Marvin Jones. I do look at him as the clear 2 behind Golladay, obviously. So it's the consistency part of what you like. So I apologize if you're hearing all the beeps of people coming into this chat and I'm like Discord inept. So I haven't really used it a lot. So I apologize if those are annoying, and I am not positive how to mute that. So I'm going to let that go, unless that's what Space Ghost Force is typing right now. Let's find out. I see him typing. If you set yourself up to do not disturb, maybe that's deafen, since I'm not. Nope, that's not it. Well, this is just a person that doesn't know how to use Discord. So that's good. I'm going to scroll back up and let you hear it again. I'm trying to watch you type down there. You gave me a screenshot? You gave me a screenshot of the app, I think. Okay. I'm fine. He says I'm fine. That's That's good because you weren't going to get me to change anything anyway. All right. Marvin Jones question. How does strength of schedule usually affect running backs and wide receivers? I noticed Saquon Barkley and Devontae Parker have some tough schedules, and Allen Robinson has the easiest. Yeah, it's a great question. The nice thing is, if you're a pass-catching running back, you are, sometimes you can be in an even better boat without worrying too much about that strength of schedule. If you're somebody like Derrick Henry, and if that team, like I don't know what the Derrick Henry fantasy season looks like if Tennessee collapses for some reason. Like I don't expect them to, but and right now there's no, Deion Lewis or somebody behind him, so he may be out there no matter what. But when you're not a pass catching running back, like if the Browns are getting walloped this year, are you going to see so much more Kareem Hunt on the field? That's where things can get a little bit dicey with strength of schedule. If you're a pure workhorse back, if you have some pass catching chops, I mean, we saw Joe Mixon have some of his best games last year towards the end of the season just because volume was there. I mean, you got to play 4 quarters. It doesn't matter how bad your team is. There's a lot of garbage time in today's NFL. And, I don't factor it too much. Like the strength of schedule, I would factor in a lot more for quarterbacks. I'd be very concerned about Daniel Jones and trying to predict the breakout and look at him those first 4 weeks that you're talking about. But I'm not avoiding Saquon because of those at all. And I'm probably not avoiding Devontae Parker. I mean, he had some monster games last year against New England, or at least one against New England from my recollection. And that didn't, I'm not too worried. If you're out there for every snap, that's what I want. If strength of schedule affects you being out there, then it's more concerning. So, all right. Let's see. How active are the managers in the Sleeper Bowl after the draft? Yeah, I mean, most managers in that league, from my experience and the experience of those in different sub leagues, is that they're pretty active. You're always going to have one or two that are somewhat inactive. It just happens. It's just the nature of joining a league that large. So, you like my hair? It's hat week this week for Mike and I. But yeah, I mean, they're pretty active, and we tried to fix some things with the Sleeper Bowl. Oh, shoot, you said Sleeper Bowl, and I was talking about the Megla Bowl. So all those answers were for the Megla Bowl. I'm getting my bowls confused. In the Sleeper Bowl, they were pretty active. Yeah, there's definitely some that were ghosting, if I'm honest with you, after the celebrity draft. But I think some of them have a couple people helping too. Like I know this year Zac Efron and his brother were running the team. I know Juju's got somebody helping him too. So, there have been some waiver pickups and stuff after. So there you go. What made you and Mike and Jason start a podcast to do this? And how did you guys come to the decision to leave your normal jobs? So we all worked together at a game studio in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was there for over 8 years. Jason was one of the owners of the company, and Mike has a degree in game design, and he's a game audio artist. So he's as you know, he plays the drops and he's a musician. So that's how we met, Mike and I. Had about 30, 35 employees. We worked at that company, and we were just geeking out on fantasy all the time. Consumed a lot of fantasy football content. Had our league of record that we were running, and spent way too much time that we probably should have been worrying about trades and stuff. So Mike and I, we spun up a podcast for fun just for our league, and we would troll the other people in our league and talk about the trades and talk about, what was going on. And it was fun. People enjoyed that. And I think Jason, actually came to us one day, and he wasn't even a part of that. And he's like, man, if you spun this up publicly, I think people would really enjoy it. And we were like, haha, okay, whatever. And he convinced us to do it, and we welcomed him in. And, at that point, we still didn't think we could make a living doing fantasy football by any stretch. We were all married, had 3 kids each. And so I had to make plans. Went and got a real estate license with Jason. We thought we'd be running real estate, and the podcast just kind of took off. So it is just a story that I still, more removed from those early days now, but somehow we got here. I don't know. People started listening. We committed to doing the year-round thing. I think that was big when we launched. and a weird, tough decision for us to make. We were like, man, if we spin this thing up in February, March, nobody's going to be listening. But we also felt like we were fantasy football freaks and wanted that content, and nobody was producing it. And so we started with the year-round commitment, and that made a big difference, I think, in finding some of those early Foot Clan supporters. So let's see. Player that you have no shares of this season but are actively trying to pursue via trade. I don't know if anybody comes to mind. No shares of. I mean, we have most of our major drafts coming up, like the ones that I really care about. So, I think I just got Devontae Adams for the first time in a league. He's interesting. I can't think of anybody that I'm like passing on in the draft, but I'm going to quickly try to acquire right afterwards. Might be people I'm keeping my eyes on to flame out. Like if Cam Akers gets drafted and kind of flames out in week 1 and week 2, I might like target somebody like Cam Akers, who I think can emerge over the back half. Chris Carson, how do you feel about him? Yeah, I mean, I like Chris Carson. I all the camp reports now that he's returned have been positive. He runs hard. He's a great player. Carlos Hyde will be worked in, not worked a lot. Carson's very fundamental to the team, and I think he is worthy of a pick higher than his ADP. I think a lot of people are waiting to see, 1, is he healthy? 2, how does he look? Those answers are kind of coming now, and we're getting down to the wire on the season. So if you're in, you have every reason to be, and I think he's worthy of a pretty high pick. Any rookie receivers interested in grabbing the last few rounds not named Jalen Reagor, Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs, and CeeDee Lamb? Brian Edwards. Brian Edwards of the Las Vegas Raiders was somebody that I would take a flyer on, the stash end of draft pick. It was just announced before right now that Tyrell Williams went on IR, and he's going to be out for the year. And Brian Edwards is getting the praise of his coaching staff, which is, a lot of players are getting that right now, but he is a rookie that would have gone higher in the draft if not for, a couple of variables. So I think Brian Edwards is somebody I would pay attention to. All right. Moncal says, as of this morning, Leonard Fournette and Devontae Freeman are the 2 highest profile running backs in free agency. Do I see either of them being signed without an injury to an RB1? I think Fournette could get signed on a real cheap 1-year deal before an injury. I think Devontae wants to get paid and wants a team's back against the wall to come in and skip camp. And he has a belief about his talent that is, very firm. So I don't think Freeman will get signed before the season myself. So people asked today, I think we had a stash or trash show. Someone asked if Freeman is a good stash, and none of us said yeah. We would not be drafting Freeman. If you wanted to spend if you're drafting today and wanted to spend a very, very late pick on Fournette just to see, okay, drop him and pick somebody else up if he doesn't get signed, I guess. Any quarterback narratives expected this season that you're not buying into? I really, really didn't like Baker Mayfield last year. I really, really thought the player on the field was terrible. I'm not buying the bounce back. So I might just miss on that. There are some that really believe in it. I didn't like what I saw. I'm also not really buying into the Gardner Minshew narrative that he's, it's one of these things where I get the rookie numbers recited to me all the time about how he's breaking records and this and that and the other thing. Like, I take those with a grain of salt because the NFL has changed, and I don't need a 20-year sample size of rookie quarterbacks. I need a 2 to 5 year sample size of rookie quarterbacks that have X amount of snaps. And so I know Gardner has the legs to, support things in terms of fantasy value. But I looked back the last 10 years at the last place team and what that fantasy football production looked like. If they're a bad team, I don't care that he has tons of garbage time. It's going to be tough. He's going to fumble. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to get sacked. And the team losing is not a good thing for him. So Doesn't mean they are going to be the worst team just because Vegas has them favored that way. It's just I've got so many other quarterbacks I can choose from in fantasy that I'm just not buying into Baker and Gardner. Spicy FTP. Do you think that there's going to be a real fantasy running back to have in Jacksonville? And if so, who? And who do you think, or do you think that nobody's going to break out and it'll be a committee? I don't think you're going to have a first and second down back breakout. And historically speaking, like Chris Thompson has not been able to stay healthy. He's the only one that I'm really interested in. If he does stay healthy, I think he will be fantasy relevant because he just gets targeted so much, and Jay Gruden knows how to use him. But that'd be the only name. Viable to opt for a lower tier RB that's a starter over a mid tier wide receiver, since you know that you're going to get those carries and targets. Lower tier RB being somebody like what? Ronald Jones tier or like Adrian Peterson tier? I mean, I always feel like if you need depth at running back, it's fine to take those guys that you know you can start, especially because everyone's kind of got their later round wide receivers that they're in on. I mean, you can get Deshaun Jackson late, and you can get Sterling Shepard late, Golden Tate. There are some kind of Jamison Crowder, some okay PPR guys late, but it just depends on your draft philosophy. Are you drafting for ceiling in those middle rounds? Or are you drafting for some stability at running back? How deep is your league? That makes a difference. What team do you think would benefit the most out of signing Fournette? I think it's Chicago. I mean, Chicago right now just needs some bodies in the backfield. You've been a longtime believer in Joe Mixon, and his contract extension today shows how much the Bengals believe in him. I know you have him ranked as your RB9, but as far as actually drafting him, how early would you be willing to take him in a half-point redraft league? Right there. I'm quite content and happy to take him at 8 or 9. I did it yesterday. He was my first-round pick. I think I was at 11, though, but that was in a CBS league. I had full PPR. I could have taken a wide receiver there like Julio or Devontae Adams. I could have taken David Johnson. I could have taken some other running backs, but I took Joe Mixon. So there you go. What? Let's see. How do you feel about Kamara and Cook's contract situation? You know, I want to believe that Kamara and the Saints can get this thing figured out. There is a gap right now in what he wants to be paid and what they're willing to do. They're willing to make him a top 5 running back. He wants McCaffrey money. And right now, I mean, more news could be breaking as I'm doing this. I don't have Twitter up, so it's possible that more information's coming along. Here we go. Ian Rappaport spoke to the Saints running back and his agent. Neither have asked for or demanded a trade. As of today, they thought they were actively negotiating and making progress towards an extension. Never threatened to hold out. He's been in the building every single day. So more of a hold in, the Melvin Ingram style. So optimistic. I think we said that on the show today. We're optimistic that he'll get in there. I don't think a trade makes any sense, you know. It's just too close to the season, too much money. So, all right. Are you worried about Drake's walking boot? Not really. Not really. I'm kind of indulging that worry for the sake of trolling Jason, which has been exceptionally fun. So I'm not too worried about it. Oh, which one of the ballers has let the fame get to their head the most? That's not a good question. Hopefully none of us. And if we have, that kind of sucks. I mean, we're thankful for the platform we have and the opportunity we have. I'll tell you that. And I know that what I take the most pride in genuinely, and this is not to sound like I'm special or something, but just I've always said, like if you've seen my interviews over the last 5 years, I've always said running the business is more fun than fantasy to me. Like having the entrepreneur side of my soul, you know, get to do this is the best part. And with that comes like providing for our employees. So that has been the most fun, is having amazing people. Al Borland, his name's Jeremy, Judge Giamatti, Brooks, Andy Schneider, a bunch of our staff are just, it's just really, really rewarding. It is hard to have the attention that comes with the show getting larger, because we genuinely wish we could like interact on a one-to-one basis with more people. I mean, we've gotten probably 10,000 like drafts sent in the last week, to our personal Twitters. And it's like, I can't get to those. I can't go through those. And, that part of it kind of sucks. But we are all the same people that we were when it started, and we approach the job the same way as when it started. So hopefully it still feels as intimate and cool of a show as it did then. And if not, I do. I mean, I'll play the show back every couple weeks and try to pay attention to what has gone sideways, or if something's gone off the mark after 1,000 shows. I mean, we are always grinding to keep the show quality and to listen to the Foot Clan. So hopefully nothing's gone to our head. I don't know. If it is, I'm sorry. Passion fruit or dragon fruit? I think I like both of those. I couldn't tell you what they look like. I feel like I've had them in smoothies, so I don't know. I'll go with dragon because that sounds more intimidating. Best map on Rocket League? I like any of the traditional, normal, I can see the ball maps as opposed to anything too wild. Let's see. Oh, no. New York or NY says, I'm a Fournette owner. Tell me what to do. I drafted him in the 3rd round. My first 2 running backs are Sanders and Drake. So a couple guys that are banged up right now. Well, you probably got Sanders and Drake in the first 2 rounds, so your commitment to running back is already paying off in the Fournette situation. Tell me what to do. Be thankful that you took running backs and you're not like fighting to have Adrian Peterson as your starter in week 1. It'll be okay. You were smart. You didn't go Patrick Mahomes in the first 2 rounds. All right, let's I'm going to hang out for probably about 15 more minutes. So I'm gonna jump through some of these. Super Bowl prediction for this year, and why is it the 49ers? Nice try. The Cardinals are going to give you an L in week 1. Probably not, but I hope so. I think my prediction a couple of months ago was Seahawks Bills, which will hurt you as a 49er fan and me as a Cardinal fan. So I'll stick with that. I think the Seahawks annoyingly good all the time, and I like the Bills, and I'm rooting for the Bills. So Roddy said, at this point, would you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Alvin Kamara? Yes, I would. I already had Kamara ranked like 8 or 9, which shocks people. So I would. In our sleeper bowl, we went Kamara, but that was because of Jason pushing that direction, and we were obviously fine with it in PPR. But Clyde is somehow the safest right now, which seems crazy. Is Henry Ruggs going to be a great player with the Tyrell situation? Maybe he'll be a good player. I like Bryan Edwards a lot too. He might have more volume. Ryzen Mall, you guys seem like good dads. What's your best advice for dads on being present and taking advantage of the opportunity that being a dad is? I don't feel like a good dad all the time. And a lot of it has to do with this thing that you're talking about being present. And I think the best advice that I don't always take, so I'm going to give the advice to myself, is to put the phone away and put it down, to not kind of be mixed attention all the time. And it's hard. It's really hard with fantasy sports and peak times of the year and with stuff and whatever job you have, you probably have a busy time, and you probably have some time that, you want to be checking your email or your Twitter feed or your notifications or the one that just went off on my watch right now. But just taking time to set those aside, even for spurts. Like, kids are so perceptive in terms of your attention, and they don't often complain about it. But they notice it. They notice when your answer is yeah versus like giving them, your eyeballs. So it's advice that I try to follow every day from myself to myself because I know I'm not that great at it. But Paranoid BK, I've got Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, and Cam Akers on my team. How should I feel? Upside down, smiley face. Well, should feel like you might have to wait to figure out which player you hit on. News about J.K. Dobbins having a role coming out today. Jonathan Taylor will have a role. Cam Akers will have a role. Starting them, you have a wide range of outcomes to start the year. Would you put CMC in a tier by himself? I would not. No. I would put him in a tier with Saquon Barkley and probably Zeke. I don't, it's rare for running backs to repeat. You have variables. CMC is going to get tons and tons and tons of work, but touchdown totals, targets, new quarterback, new head coach, there are variables in play. So, what rank have I reached in Rocket League? It has been a little while. I think in threes, I got to diamond. I don't think I'm much higher than. Did I get to champion? Probably high diamond. And then low diamond for like duos. Yeah, that's as good as I am. We got hammered in a couple tournaments. Me and my Papa Josh, who does our customer support. Yeah, we got destroyed. People are really good at that game. It's annoying. As a fellow Arizonan, what are favorite parts of Scottsdale and enjoying the heat? Golly, the idea of going out and doing things has been so foreign for so long now with COVID. I love the restaurants in Scottsdale. I love going out there for like Studio Movie Grill. I love it's probably about a 40-minute drive from where we live, so we're not out there a lot anymore. Used to work out there, but it's great. It's great. I mean, there are people complain about right now, and then they forget that there's no snow, and we have 80-degree weather for another 5 months in the winter. So, how far is the studio from your house? We do not carpool together. No, I don't like those guys. They're terrible people. But it's about 20 minutes away. Maybe a little bit less than that, about 15 minutes away. So it's nice. I get to listen to a podcast on the way in. So, yeah. All right. Time for a few more questions. So if you want, type them in. How do you approach fantasy relevant players that are hurt to start the season but could play a decent role later on, like Debo and Mike Williams? Mike Williams is like in a different category because I had questions about his fantasy contributions before. But with someone like Debo, like they have to be at that level. They have to be high enough to where I know the production will be coming back. Not maybe. That's what makes Jalen Reagor and Mike Williams so difficult. Is it's not. I'm not going to hold a guy. I got to be honest with myself as a fantasy player. I'm not going to hold a guy that maybe will have production. I will think I'm going to do that. Then I will release them for a waiver wire pickup in week 2 because they've been sitting on my bench not scoring points. If you have an IR spot, it's different. Put Mike Williams, put Jalen Reagor there, and then wait. Debo, I know, will have production when he comes back, and it's all looking good. So that's a player I'm willing to take that, take and stash and wait if it's a couple weeks away. So most leagues I've ever been in at once. Oh, Tanner, I'm ashamed. I think I'm in 9 right now, and I don't like it at all. And I just got backed into another one today by our manager who wanted us to join one. And I hate it because I like to relate to everybody who's playing in 2 or 3 leagues. So the truth is I'm in 9, but I care about like 3. And I'm proud to say I care about them. Like, I co-own some of the other ones with Jason and Mike, and so we can piece it together. But in terms of like actually loving leagues, it's like 3. 3 I love you leagues. Like I got to win these leagues. Pride and joy leagues, as opposed to, and one of those is Dynasty, Bryce. So, one of those is a Dynasty. One of them is a keeper league, and one's like a redraft. So, and then I got like a family league, so it's a little bit of a lower lift. I'm teaching the kids how to play. We've got a league with people we work with. We got some industry leagues. So, I think 3 is the right amount where you can actually give it the right attention. How far into the season do you look when picking players and when you draft? Not that far. Activity will get you a lot of the way there as you move on. So I'm not looking at bye weeks really. I hardly do. I really hardly do. It's one of those things we always say, if you have the same roster in week 9 that you do when you draft, you are probably going to be losing. I mean, you got to be making adjustments, and your bye weeks are going to reappropriate. And I barely pay attention to bye weeks. I really do. The only time I'd pay attention to a bye week would be like a 2-quarterback league where I don't want them to line up on the same day, or multi-tight end leagues, different formats like that. Favorite player to watch? Genuinely one of my favorite players to watch, and I will just say his name now because of the contract. It's Joe Mixon. The guy runs the same, whether they're down 30 points or the game just started. He is a baller. He loves to run the football as hard as humanly possible. So there are a few guys like that. Chris Carson's in that category too, I love guys that just play their heart out on every snap, no matter what. Hopkins is a blast to watch play football. So he's in that category too. Obviously the Saquon, CMC's, Patrick Mahomes is a blast. Lamar Jackson. Not surprising list. So, do I ever think Chase Edmonds will take over the lead role in Arizona? And same thing with Damian Harris. I don't really think Chase Edmonds will ever take over the lead role. No. So if you're thinking about him in Dynasty, I don't think that is part of the Cardinals' plan with Edmonds. I don't think he's not workhorse capable, in my opinion. Thoughts on Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella? Okay, I mean, Kirk could have a very surprisingly good year if the passing yardage goes up and the touchdown percentage goes up for Kyler. We're going to talk about Kyler tomorrow. That's a little tease for the show. But Kirk, he was banged up last year, so he has a lot of upside. Isabella, it's hard to see the path right now with Fitz there, with Hopkins, Drake out of the backfield. Isabella will have 3 games this year with 85 and a touchdown, on a big play. So, favorite all-time football player for fantasy football, Arian Foster. Arian Foster for sure. Is it hard to keep your work brain in work mode when you work with friends? Yeah. Although our work and play is very similar, so I'm blessed to be able to say that. But we have some hardy, competitions, foosball, shuffleboard, those type of things. So, do you use normal rules for a league with your kids, or do you use a simple rule set? I keep like the waivers. I don't do fab with my kids' league. I noticed that waivers were actually one of the hardest things for people to for the kids to understand last year. Just like the timing and adding another layer of got to outbid people, and silent bidding was not something that I really felt like teaching them in year 1 for an 8 and 10-year-old at the time. So that would be the only one that I keep in mind. So, all right, I got to wrap this up. I hope y'all had a good time. Really appreciate everybody that does support the show and listens, and we're always tuning in. Bye, Andy. Tell Jason I love you. Yeah, we're always listening to feedback, and we always appreciate all the thoughts out there, even the bad ones, even the trolls. So thank you very much for joining me on here, and I wish you guys all a spectacular 2020 season. And take care, everybody. See you.